Let's walk through my solution to the challenge, and you can compare my code to yours. And there's no one right or wrong answer here. You might have a different solution than mine, and that's okay. So the docstring part of the challenge was pretty straightforward. So that's the first thing I did, and you can see the result right here. Your solution probably looks very similar to this part. So we have the 3 characters with the explanation of what the string combiner function does, followed by the closing 3 quotes, and that's what creates our docstring. For the rest of the solution, remember that we had to combine all the string and integer number arguments into one result string and ignore other types. And we also had to take into account this unique parameter to see if we needed to return a string that only had unique characters in it. So you can see that the function definition has a variable argument list, and that's how the code was called. So my code loops over each argument. Well, first it declares an empty result string, and then it loops over each argument. And what I'm doing is I'm using the isInstance function to check to see if the argument is either an integer or a string. And if so, it adds it to the result string. And you might be wondering like why Booleans end up getting involved and included in the result. And that's because Booleans, the way they're implemented in Python, they're actually integers. So this isInstance call will return true for Booleans as well as integers. But you probably noticed that floating points got left out. All right. And so let's see what's next. So at this point, right, I have a string that contains all the arguments, but then we had to check this unique argument, right? And if the unique argument is true, then we need to make sure that each character only appears once in the string. So what I do is I create a new result temporary variable, and I use the set operator to create a set out of the string that I've got so far, because sets can only contain unique values, right? So this will actually strip out all the duplicates. And then I simply set the value of the return string to the empty string, and I use the join function. And the join function will simply concatenate all of the individual characters in the set that I just created into a result string, and then return the result. All right, so let's go ahead and try my code and see if it works. So the first example is a list of strings, integers, and Booleans, and we're not using unique. So let's test the code. And sure enough, you can see that it concatenated this is one true string, exclamation point, which is what we expected. All right, let's go ahead and change this to true. And now let's test the code. And sure enough, now we can see that each one of the characters only appears once in the result. All right, so let's go ahead and set this back to false. And let's try another one of these. So let's try this one with the array. So what's going to happen is these strings should be included, but because this is neither a string nor an integer, or a Boolean for that matter, it should be ignored. So now let's go ahead and let's go comment that one out. It'll still work, but let's just be clean with our code. And sure enough, you can see that the array is ignored. Let's go ahead and try something else. Let's try putting in a floating point number, because the floating point's not an integer, so that should be ignored. Yep, sure enough it is. All right, and let's try putting in a Boolean. Okay, that should work. Yep, it does. All right, and then let's try setting unique to true. And it seems to be working. Okay, so that's my result. That's my solution. Take my code and compare it to yours.